real estate market in the UK, about 7.4 billion. We can access over 360 properties. Once all the tokens are sold, that then triggers an SPV. A lawyer is automatically appointed to represent the SPV on behalf of the token holders. The title deed is changed over, then the investors control the SPV.
I'm the co-founder and CTO of Xcavate. We are developing a foundational protocol to verify every aspect of real estate, from land acquisition, planning, construction, the finished properties, and on to property management. The thing we're focused on is getting the regulation in place and then launching our parachain and then listing the first properties. When I first heard about Bitcoin, it was actually the same time as my sister ended up being homeless. She's got two daughters, my nieces, and one of them was studying film at the time in Manchester University. She actually filmed the whole process. So going back, my sister, very hardworking all of her life, she was renting this house from a large superstore. And then basically the superstore said they wanted to build this car park. She was given a couple of months' notice. All the prices in the area had risen to such a degree that they priced her out of the market. She ended up in a halfway house. My niece filmed the whole experience, won a junior BAFTA for it. I actually didn't realise the full extent of what was going on until I watched the film. But that has always stayed with me, the unfairness of the real estate market and how something can happen like that over time. So when I heard about blockchain, the way in which we can democratize any asset and actually derive value from a community, I love that. I'm a big believer in fairness, and I think the system globally is quite unfair. So with blockchain, it removes those barriers of fairness. And if you can start to then divide up the asset into smaller chunks that people can accumulate over time, that's another mechanism to allow people to access an area that sometimes is deemed to be out of people's reach. I'm traditionally from an engineering background. Did an apprenticeship and spent many years being a tool maker and various other engineering roles. And then I moved into software development. I had my own business, and a couple of my Web2 clients were buying Bitcoin and waxing lyrical about Ethereum and a few other coins. And I didn't understand it. I didn't see the value behind it. I just thought it was like, fictitious money, and I wasn't a speculator, so I didn't dive in and I didn't invest. But I was intrigued by the technology, and I thought I wanted to pick it apart and understand how it worked. And then the more I looked at what Gavin was doing and going down the route of developing Polkadot, that intrigued me even more. So I followed his journey for a couple of years whilst I was doing various other projects. And then 2019, 2020, I found myself reading a lot of books. The Blockchain Revolution by Don Tapscott was a really big changer for me in terms of having an outlook on what NFTs were and what they could offer in terms of fractional ownership of real world assets. I had quite a few hotel clients, and I thought the big spaces in hotels would be fantastic to showcase NFT art. At the same time, I was having a chat with my co-founder, Alex. Alex is very real world. He's been in real estate for like 25 years. And he said, don't like the NFT art project at all. However, these are the pain points in the real estate industry. So we started talking about that. And that's when we started understanding, okay, well, let's look at how an NFT can represent real estate, and then how we can fractionalize that. Initially, we talked about having fractional NFTs, but later on, it became apparent that it was better to have one NFT that represented a particular property, like a two-bed apartment, but then have stable coins that then you could fractionalize over 100, 200, 300,000 different parts of that asset. We Initially, I wasn't quite sure how to approach the tech stack because my background was more open source software just for creating websites and apps. Didn't understand Rust, didn't understand Substrate, and didn't know where to start at all. So after lots of conversations with various agencies, we looked at the idea of outsourcing everything and got like an architectural tech stack drawn up from a couple of agencies. Spent quite a lot of money and didn't really get anywhere. And I'd been following Ingo and Kilt, the Kilt protocol, for quite a while. And then I reached out to Ingo and we had a chat about the digital identity because I knew that would be a crucial part of verifying who owns the asset. And I was talking through the process of trying to get this project off the ground with Ingo, and he was saying, why are you outsourcing it? You need to do this yourself. You need to go through the pain of understanding the tech and building it from scratch. And that was a pivotal moment for me. We really started to build a team. I did a couple of hackathons. I got to speak to a couple of people, and one of them has been in the team ever since. And then I've just built my understanding, made sure that we've got a broad depth of knowledge from front-end full-stack developers right through to the Substrate developers at the back. And I made sure that I looked for people, it was personality over technical knowledge, because I wanted people that believe in the passion of the vision of what we're trying to achieve longer term, because I thought we can all learn about the technology over time. And that's why a couple of my guys have gone to the Polkadot Blockchain Academy recently in Singapore. And I actually attended last year at Berkeley. Going back to Decoded 2022, I met Tim Dobie. Tim Dobie is now the director of the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, and we just got chatting about various different things, and we just kept in touch. And then that was the moment when we started to build the team. So I didn't know about the Blockchain Academy at that stage, but 6 months later, he got in touch with me saying there was an opportunity, there was a new founders track in the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, and would I like to apply for it? I felt like a fish out of water. There were so many really intelligent people there, and I thought, I've not really had a very academic background. I found my son has dyslexia, and a lot of the problems that he was having during lockdown, I resonated with when I was a child. So I struggled with large amount of information, written information. So I've learned over time to absorb information in a different way. But going to the Blockchain Academy was amazing, because not only were there experts in the Polkadot field, but there were personalities that were from all sorts of walks of life. And I felt whilst I was probably one of the oldest, whilst I probably wasn't as qualified as some of these people, my passion and my interest in what Polkadot was about and what it was striving to achieve, I think resonated with lots of other people. And I fitted in really well, and I immersed myself in that process. It was not only great from an educational point of view, but the network of people that I met there have really helped the development of the project ever since. With the introduction of Agile Core Time, this removes huge barriers from engaging as a parachain. When we looked initially at engaging with some investors, the big barrier was being able to get $200,000 or whatever it was to secure over a 2-year period. Now we can just operate on a 4-week rolling Agile Core Time slot, and I think the costs are relatively low in comparison. It means that we can iterate our project, we can be very flexible. So Agile Core Time is a perfect fit for our project, and it will mean that we can get to market much quicker. For me, the Polkadot ecosystem, the shared security was fundamental. But on top of that, the way the palette structure works, I love the fact that you can just play around with different plugins and different parts of the Polkadot SDK in terms of customizing the palettes. It made it much, much easier from a development point of view, and it meant that you can test out your ideas very, very quickly. It's never been a better time for a Web2 developer to step into Web3. Looking around at all the developers I see within Discord and other environments, Everyone's excited about the Polkadot ecosystem. Everyone loves the SDK. Yeah, it's a bit painful to get through initially, but once you've gone through that pain, it's so easy to just spin things up. Play safe and start small. I think going back, we wanted to build something big, and it's been a hard and long journey. It's worthwhile, but I think you can start smaller and just test things out. There's enough support in the ecosystem for people to reach out to. There's a huge number of hackathons as well, so I would recommend someone doing that first and foremost. And if you've got an idea, you can flesh that idea out over time. Alex, my co-founder, has got 20 odd years of experience within the real estate industry, from land acquisition, the actual construction of new build properties, and then the sales and lettings. So I was very much intrigued by the whole process of how that works. And if you take a real estate developer based in the UK, they build a 9-block apartment. They may sell half of those apartments locally, but the problem is that the prices are so high that not everyone can afford it. So our thinking is that we can spread the opportunity into a global arena. So there's this collective investment scheme opportunity. But the first thing we need to do is obviously check the real estate developer actually has built this property and it exists, and they actually own the land and all those things. So we looked at the DID, the digital identifier. The Kilt protocol has already got that wrapped up within their environment. So all we need to do is be able to verify that digital identity exists, and then do KYC and KYB. And again, we don't need to do any of those credentials. It's just a question of verification. And we're partnering with the likes of Accurast, where we create oracles which can check land acquisition and land registry, as well as the actual price of a particular asset. So the developer might say the 2-bed apartment is worth £300,000, but how do we know that's true? So there's a lot of centralized information out there, but we're trying to decentralize it. So we're looking at an upper and a lower banding and understanding that is it within that banding. If it is, then they can actually mint and list that property as an NFT. The NFT is actually locked in a pallet, and then the developer would actually determine how many fractions that individual property is divided into, and then list that as an opportunity on a marketplace. And then a real estate investor would again go through the KYC process and then be able to determine from all of the attributes of that particular property whether it's suitable for their investment. And then once they've chosen a number of tokens that they wish to invest in, the tokens are then locked until all of the tokens are sold. That triggers another oracle which creates what's called an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, which is like a limited company which owns that particular asset. And then a lawyer is automatically appointed to represent the token holders SPV, and they liaise with the lawyer from the real estate development. So there's a transfer of the title deed, so that's the sort of legal aspect. But that then is all wrapped up in a multi-sig wallet, and that's where the transfer of the funds and the tokens happens. Once all that has already happened, there's automatically an allocation to a letting agent in that region that has been through the KYC and KYB process. And then each property acts as its own DAO, so all of the token holders vote on various aspects of the running of that particular property. And if they're not happy with the way the letting agent is operating, they can potentially vote that letting agent out. Each DAO has its own treasury because obviously there's going to be ongoing running costs. So what happens is the income nets the fees from the letting agent and net any taxes that are due is then distributed to all of the token holders. And what we also want to do, looking at game theory that I learned at the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, is bring into play the renter as a possible token holder. So that way incentives are aligned. It also brings into play buying pressure from a token point of view, because there's a secondary market where maybe a token holder wants to sell their token on at a later stage. Then the renter can become a token holder, or other token holders of that particular property could buy more tokens in that property or the open market. So we've developed the underlying protocol and we've tested it using the Tansy app chain, and that's been a great process and a great experience. We've also launched an instance on Passio, which is the Polkadot testnet, looking at the integration of verification of the DIDs. So we just need to launch a parachain using Agile core time, and then we also are launching a fundraise on Polymech. I love the fact that it's a crowd loan, a Web3 specific crowd loan platform that is regulatory compliant rather than using some Web2 trusted entity. Centrifuge is an amazing project, so we want to reach out to them and look how potentially someone can leverage that particular asset. Maybe they want to buy a car, maybe they want to go on holiday. How can they leverage that asset without having to sell it? And then we've also applied to the FCA sandbox, which is like the SEC for the UK. We need a collective investment scheme license as a broker, bringing the real estate developer and the real estate investors together. And for the secondary market, would need an exchange license. So we've recently got a new member of the team, Claire, who's got a lot of experience with exchanges getting licenses. So she helped us write our application to the FCA because they don't really understand the technology. And I think anything they don't understand, they're quite frightened by. So it's making sure that the language of the application fitted with what they want to see, the risk controls, making sure that the investors' interests are protected. And that's really our ethos is that anyway. So it's just making sure that we get that application in as quickly as possible and then follow up over the next couple of months. So the whole process of the finished property from onboarding to the sale and the management of that property will be done using our initial sort of test network that we're going to launch to mainnet. And then the process will be then to decentralize over time. So, I mean, Polkadot has taken 4 years plus now to fully decentralize. So I think that's realistic timescale for us, that we don't want to decentralize too quickly and therefore introduce risk into any element of the process, because one, it will damage our project, and two, there's an opportunity to engage with governments about things like social housing. And if they see something that's robust and is relative to their what they can apply to their country or their region, they'll engage with us. And then it's a question of how can we help them build these things that are relative to their industry with the tools that we can create. Planning is a massive problem in the UK and other parts of the world, so we'd love to set some sort of guidelines and parameters about how to make that process much more efficient and more fair. So we're starting to have conversations with the property developers about what they need from the system and what they expect, how it needs to operate from their perspective. And they love the idea, and they can see access to an international market would be really helpful for them to sell more properties and develop more properties and reduce down the times. Because for a developer, most sales are around about 12 to 16 weeks, if they're lucky. And if you bolt on the fact that most developments take about 18 months, if they can start to remove and reduce down those timings, then they can obviously produce more properties. And there's a massive shortfall of properties. I mean, the UN have said we need 2 billion new homes in the next 80 years. So that's a huge amount of real estate. So we need to do something different. We need to make it more efficient. So yeah, these developers, they're not very technically minded. So we need to make sure we're holding their hand and we're producing something from a front end perspective that abstracts out the Web3 element. And that goes for the real estate investors as well. So we're talking with a number of partners within the Polkadot ecosystem that can help us abstract those elements out. I see social housing as being a great opportunity because unfortunately in the UK, back in the Thatcher days, everyone who was in social housing had the opportunity to buy, which was a great scheme at the time. Everyone thought it was really good because it gets people onto the property ladder. Unfortunately, that means that all of the houses that were available to social housing are now in the private market, and there wasn't this replenishing process happening. So I feel that with the efficiencies that blockchain can bring to the real estate market, it will allow those stocks to be replenished. And then by fractionalizing and tokenizing the real estate, people can have different elements of support from the government at different times. I love crypto, and I love the idea of creating our own community value from particular projects and particular coins, but it's so volatile. And most of the world needs something a little bit more stable, especially when it comes to things like real estate. So I think it can be a nice hedge. So there's lots of opportunities there. I love the idea of creating these pools for investment into the construction of real estate, so people get in early. And that's where collaboration with the likes of Centrifuge could be really, really exciting. We're building this community at the moment. We've got this ambassador program that we've started. So it's about getting the feedback from the community. And that's quite a mix between Web3 natives and Web2. We're engaging with both developers, potential investors, people that invested in real estate for years, but love the idea of spreading their risk over lots of different properties in lots of different areas. So that's one aspect. But I also want to make sure that it's open and accessible for everyone, and that's going to take quite a lot of storytelling and explaining. People can't relate to Web3 and their day-to-day lives, and so we're trying to bridge that gap and make it real at the end of the day, because if it touches someone's life and makes it better, for me that's the real test, litmus test. For me, the vision is, how couldn't we empower younger people to feel like that buying a property is within their reach? And there's a real problem because properties are being bought up by the mega rich, and the asset prices are then getting higher. So the gap's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need this off the ground very, very quickly into like a mass market. And now we believe our protocol is scalable compared to a lot of the current smart contracts that are out there. And I think that's the most important thing. How can we get this out into all different regions in the world? They're all going to have different kinds of regulation. But the thing that's going to be key is the underlying protocol. If we've got this base layer, and then the SDK and everything else that gets built on top of it can be relative to each region and sort of tweaked and customized. We're starting in the UK because we're from the UK and we know the UK market. And then once we've established ourselves in the UK, we can then iterate over time, look at other regions, understand where the regulation is slightly different, and then encourage other operators and look at enterprise. There's opportunity to introduce the likes of Zillow, Rightmove to be integrated into Web3 because they're well-established Web2 companies, but they probably don't know where to start in terms of the Web3. So if we can find ways of introducing mass market adoption rather than just focused on little niche areas and bringing a few hundred properties in, that would be our ultimate goal.